The following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Thank you for coming to the Project Entertainment Network store. Please place your order. A good choice. A t-shirt for the horror show with Brian Keene. A Manta Method coffee mug. There's more. A Necrocast Icon hoodie. That's sharp. But why on earth would you want Bizong leggings? Wait, are you Mr. Frank? The Project Entertainment Network store, stacked with goodies from all your favorite podcasts. T-shirts, hoodies, mugs and more. www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And welcome back once again, true believers, to Defenders Dialogue. I'm Brian Keene.
And I am Christopher Golden. And Brian, Excelsior, my friend.
Excelsior to you, my friend. Today we are going over Defenders issues 104 and 105. Now, readers remember how excited I was when Devil Slayer joined the team. Today, your excitement probably rivals that. Because although he made a cameo on last week's episode, one of your favorite Marvel characters officially joins the Defenders with this issue.
Yeah, he is. And I have to say, interestingly enough, the Beast is a character who has had so many iterations and he's belonged to so many teams. He's been out there so many times. So when I say that Beast is one of my favorite characters, I have to be specific and say that it's this Beast. It's the Beast of the Defenders. It's the Beast of the Avengers. It's the Beast of, was it Amazing Adventures that he was? No, it wasn't Amazing Adventures. I can't think of the moment. But
I think you're right. I think it was Amazing Adventures where because originally in X-Men he was, he
didn't have any fur.
Blue furred, right.
Right.
He wasn't the Kelsey Grammer Beast, for those who only know Beast from the movies.
Oh, no, the Kelsey Grammer Beast is terrible. No, so basically he starts out as a mutant, but not with blue fur. And then because Dr. Hank McCoy is a biogeneticist, he begins to experiment on himself while working for, I think he's working for Roxxon in that
right.
In that comic, and he basically does a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing, and he causes a secondary mutation in himself to become a furry blue bouncing crazy person. And the character's been portrayed many different ways, physically and dialogue wise over the years. But the version of the Beast that we see in Amazing Adventures, and then we see in the Avengers when he becomes best friends with Simon Williams, a.k.a. Wonder Man. And they're a fun sort of team when they're within the Avengers. And now as a member of the Defenders, I love. But at a certain point, and I want to say it's in like the 90s, there was a tertiary mutation that he had that made him look more like Beauty and the Beast.
Right.
And once that happens, and he's no longer sort of this happy-go-lucky character, he's less interesting to me.
I agree.
Yeah. So I'm not. So when I talk about the Beast, I'm talking about this one.
Something that occurred to me while you were talking about this, and this will come up later in the episode. J.M. DeMatteis, not only is he writing the Defenders at this era in Marvel history, but he's done some issues of the Avengers as well, which will tie in with this week's episode. But, you mentioned the Beast's friendship with Wonder Man.
Right.
It very much reminds me of Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, a decade later at DC Comics in Justice League, which was written by J.M. DeMatteis and Keith Giffen. And I have to wonder if this was these issues of Defenders and Avengers were DeMatteis's training ground for that kind of
dynamic,
buddy superhero dynamic. I mean, you go and read Justice League now. It was a sitcom with superheroes, and it's wonderful. But you kind of get the sense in rereading these that DeMatteis was exploring that sort of dialogue and that sort of dynamic between superheroes.
Yeah. No, interesting. I feel like and similarly in that relationship, I was always much more interested in Blue Beetle than I was in Booster Gold. And the same here. Like Wonder Man, I enjoyed the Beast and Wonder Man together in the Avengers, but I think that there's not enough room in the Defenders to have Wonder Man be anything but irritating.
I agree. I've always found Wonder Man's character, he's great when he's teamed up with the Beast. He's okay when he's a foil for the Vision and Scarlet Witch.
Right.
But solo, I never cared for the character.
Yeah. Although I have to say the rumor that he was going to appear in Guardians of the Galaxy as played by Nathan Fillion was perfect. I mean, that would have been great.
It would have been.
Listen, before we get into it, I also want to say that we begin this issue with a story that you need to talk about because, it's Devil Slayer, and I feel like every time we talk about Devil Slayer, you need to be the guy who talks about Devil Slayer. Oh, and before we get into that, we keep talking about how every episode we talk about how Marvel needs to to do a new Defenders comic, and I think the approach is one that they're just about to take because according to Bleeding Cool this morning, and this is not a take on the Defenders, Donny Cates, who's become a very successful writer for Marvel, is launching a new Guardians of the Galaxy series. And in this particular Guardians of the Galaxy series, it looks incredibly ambitious because it includes, I'm looking at the image right now, it looks like it's going to be a gatefold cover. It includes basically everyone who's ever been a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy in any of its iterations. So there are about 40 characters on this cover.
Is Jack Flag included in that iteration?
I don't know because I need to enlarge the the version, but it's the classic Guardians and the more recent Guardians and the Adam Warlock and the Starjammers and the Imperial Guard, and I can't even tell who else is. The Silver Surfer Galactus is in here.
Oh, wow.
So it certainly looks like Beta Ray Bill. It certainly looks like it's going to be an interesting approach. But what I like about it is the ambition, and I think that there's a way to do a fantastic Defenders series with the same approach. But anyway.
Right.
Enough about that. I thought you might find that interesting.
I do find that interesting, and I would just point out to CB Cebulski if he's listening, something else you could do is you could let me finish my Devil Slayer series. I mean, I did it for the Max line, but we could your continuity's so fucked up at this point. We could easily put it in the mainstream Marvel universe.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
I wonder why they never returned my calls anymore.
Yeah, no wonder. All right, so Defenders 104, and Brian, I believe you said you were actually reading the floppy comic this time.
I am. Once again, thanks to a friend of mine who sent me a bunch of back issues when I was still laying in the burn ward. For the entirety of this podcast, I've been reading the Marvel Masterworks and then the Marvel Essential Defenders, but yeah, now I'm back reading the actual floppies, not the same ones I owned as a kid. I sold those in my early 30s and bought a house, but it's good to have the originals and see the ads and the letters pages and the bullpen bulletins. And so yeah, we open with a story called Yesterday Never Dies. Of course, story written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Perlin and Sinnott, edits by Al Milgrom. The same team that's been bringing us all this glory now. And we open in Greenwich Village, the hellhole apartment that belongs to Sunshine. You'll remember Devil Slayer's, I don't want to call him friend, but He's the hippie that Devil Slayer's been trying to help kick heroin and beat his own demons. And as we open, Devil Slayer has told him that, he's tried to help him. He's used his telepathic powers to restore Sunshine's drug-addled brain. But, Sunshine has to kick his physical dependence on heroin by himself.
Yep. And unfortunately, Sunshine says he's not ready. And he says, you can't hide my stuff anymore. You got to let me have one more fix. And unfortunately, with any addiction, one more fix seems to be the fallback position. And that just pisses Devil Slayer off. He's done. He's, I've been trying to help you. I've done everything for you, but I'm not going to let you do anything. I'm not your father, Sunshine. I have no wish to provide you with rules. You're an adult. Do as you please. But don't ever essentially ask me for help again. And Sunshine pleads with him to stay. He says, I want to change. I want to help you. And Devil Slayer sees that he seems to be earnest and he wants to help him. But then, Brian, Devil Slayer senses someone outside the door.
That's right. And when he opens the door, it's not a human being. It's a demon with a special delivery for Eric Simon Payne. And he hands him a letter. Devil Slayer opens it. And oh my God, it's his wife, Corey, who we last saw during the Six-Fingered Hand saga. And she has been captured and kidnapped. There are photos of her being bound and tied up. And there's a letter with them. And Devil Slayer reacts as you might guess he would. And we then, once again, get a little more backstory with him. We flash back. This is all before he joined the cult of Vera Gemini and became an assassin for them, which is how we first met him in Defenders. It talks a little bit more about his time in Vietnam. We found out that he napalmed an entire village of Vietnamese, something that we didn't even get in Defenders 100. So that's interesting. We find out that when he comes home, Corey has changed, America has changed. He doesn't get the hero's welcome that he feels he deserved, and so he becomes an alcoholic. Then he becomes a hitman for the mob, which we already knew. But what we didn't know was that he blew up a car in Los Angeles with a pipe bomb. The mob had told him that the person he was killing was an informer. But it turns out the car belonged to a newspaper reporter the mob wanted out of the way. And the reporter's wife and son got into the car before he did. So Devil Slayer was responsible for the death of this man's wife and son. This reporter, Ian Fate, has now somehow mastered the occult arts, tracked down Devil Slayer, kidnapped Corey in the hopes of luring Devil Slayer to him. And that is exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, what's really interesting here to me is that this is a story that DeMatteis has created and told us in one page.
Yep.
Rather than do a whole arc where you see the build-up for this, he basically presents it. Here's a demon delivering a letter that allows us to have a page of telling us the backstory, giving us a story we have never seen before that sends Devil Slayer off on a completely different tangent. He basically tells Sunshine, I'm sorry, I can't help you right now. I've got to, take care of other things. I have devils of another sort to slay. And he takes off, leaving Sunshine to his own, his own deeds. So, but what's interesting, Brian, is that we have this arc with Devil Slayer, and then we also have this arc with Son of Satan, which picks up right here on the same page. And I definitely want to talk to DeMatteis about these two characters and the arcs that he's sending them through. Because here we have the Son of Satan is in the Arizona desert. We last saw him. He was being taken away to hell.
That's right.
So he's, stumbling through the Arizona desert, just sort of lurching there. And he falls down and he whispers or croaks his father's name. And we hear Satan's voice and we see his shadow. Spare me your infantile cries, Damon. You may not return to hell until the remaining humanity has been purged from your soul. So again, we're getting this backstory without belaboring it. We're just like, oh, apparently Hellstrom has been going through his own trials that we're unaware of.
That's right. And I just want to note that the one panel in that sequence, Perlin and Senna do something. As a writer of horror, primarily, I think it's so effective visually. Rather than showing us Satan, who we have seen, you'll remember in issues 99 and 100.
Right.
But this time, we only see his shadow fall over the son of Satan. We don't see Satan himself, and I think it's so effective and so chilling. So props to them for that.
Yeah.
There's also another neat sequence there as Damon is crying, weeping. I mean, no more arrogant son of Satan. This is somebody who's been broken down. But as he's crying, his tears actually burn the earth, and I thought that was a nice little touch.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, they're steaming as they hit the ground. And I also want to say that what's interesting about this is this guy is pleading with Satan to let him come back to hell.
Yep.
So this is not a superhero like any superhero we have seen before.
No.
I mean, this is some pretty weird and dark stuff. And again, like, this is the stuff that warped us in the best possible way.
Well, both of these heroes, really, if you think about it. Yeah. I mean, you're right. Son of Satan, like nothing we've seen before. Devil Slayer, you could say, oh, well, it's just J.M. DeMatteis doing the Punisher. But it's not. This is, if he was the Punisher never felt remorse for his actions. He never second-guessed himself. Devil Slayer is nearly crippled at this point with self-doubt.
Right. Yeah, it's really... Devil Slayer is definitely more of a character who might have appeared in Pulp, because you have this character who combines... This is one of the things, like, Snagosky and I talk about all the time. We love this stuff, where you combine the sort of crime and mystery and all of that stuff with occult horror, which... you didn't really find except in the early pulps, and then later you found it in comics, and eventually it would become a staple of genre fiction.
Right.
In any case, so we're at Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum, where Doctor Strange is sitting with the Beast, the bounding blue-furred beast, Hank McCoy. Wong told Doctor Strange that the Beast had come by and waited in vain for his return. And so when Doctor Strange did get home, he contacted the Avengers, who put him in touch with the Beast, and now here the Beast is again. Wong interrupts their conversation because Sunshine has come to visit Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Sunshine has the letter that the demon delivered to Devil Slayer.
Right.
And, basically, Doctor Strange puts Wong in charge of helping Sunshine. And then, Doctor Strange reads the letter, catches up on what's happened to Devil Slayer. And, all the other defenders are gone. Gargoyle, Valkyrie, Hellcat, Hulk, everybody's gone. So it's him and the Beast. And then he sends his psychic projection to Simon Williams, a.k.a. Wonder Man. Now, I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on Wonder Man's origin. If we ever do the Avengers as a follow-up to this show, maybe we'll talk about him. But basically, Chris, stop me if I'm wrong, he's based on the android body of the Vision, right?
Yeah, basically Ultron sent him as a villain to infiltrate the Avengers. And then he died, and he was a good guy. It's all very complicated, and he has some kind of cosmic. He's essentially made up of cosmic energy at this point,
with the Vision's mind imprinted on.
Right, with the pattern. Yes, the brain patterns. Actually, though, I think it's the reverse. I think that the Vision's brain patterns are based on Simon Williams.
Okay.
But so they share that connection, but. So they consider one another brothers, the Vision and Simon Williams, who is Wonder Man. But
and he has, as we said earlier, the Beast's best friend. So
yes, yeah, there we go. And in this case, that's really all we need to know. And he's a low C-list Hollywood actor trying to be a big action movie star. And he's had some success, but he still doesn't quite break through. So Doctor Strange appears to Wonder Man because the Beast has recommended that if they need help, they need some muscle, they can call in Wonder Man. So Doctor Strange does, and then we cut back to your favorite.
That's right. Devil Slayer is in a industrial district, a warehouse district. It's sort of deserted and run down, and inside one of these warehouses, we find this reporter, Ian Fate, who indeed has mastered the occult arts. He has an army of demons who are serving him, and we see Corey levitating in the air, unconscious, surrounded by 6 daggers, ready to plunge into her like a human pincushion. And Devil Slayer confronts him. We get a quick recap of how Fate went and learned the occult mystic arts. He attacks Devil Slayer. Fight breaks out between Devil Slayer and the demons, and then before Devil Slayer can save her, the knives plunge into Corey, and we think she's dead. But is she, Chris?
Of course not. Of course she's not dead. This has been Ian Fate playing with Devil Slayer all along. The illusion of Corey vanishes. Ian Fate says, "Surprise pain, I lied. That wasn't Corey, just a projection made convincing by the images of Icon," which, by the way, is a spell that we've seen Doctor Strange use in the past.
Exactly.
"I have your real woman secreted away somewhere else." And Devil Slayer gets enraged and attacks. But, before we continue on, Brian, I want to go back a page.
Okay.
Because I just want to point out that there is an ad here.
Oh, for Dungeons and Dragons, yeah.
For Dungeons and Dragons, a TSR ad. You could rip this thing out. Not that anybody would. And in those days, people would cut them out and send out your name and address to receive a catalog from TSR, the company that began Dungeons and Dragons. And so it's interesting. It's laid out like a comic book. So yeah, it's interesting to see from that era because, of course, although it seems like Dungeons and Dragons is more popular than ever now, in those days, people played it the way they play it now. But in the interim, video games and computer games came in, and it became a thing. The idea of playing these sort of board games and live action role playing games went away for a while. In a way, yeah. So I think I'm fascinated by it. But anyway.
I agree. I'm fascinated by my 10-year-old Dungeon Master 77.1. Yeah. That's his public pseudonym that he picked for himself.
Yeah.
And of course, Dungeon Master, he got that from playing Dungeons and Dragons, which he loves, all his buddies love, and these are kids who were born and raised on video games, and yet they love the pen and paper and dice aspect of D&D. But yeah, anyway, Devil Slayer is joined by Doctor Strange, the Beast, and Wonder Man, and they are going to head off to this distant dimension where Fate has stranded Corey. But while they're doing that, we then turn to the rest of the Defenders: Kyle Richmond, a.k.a. Nighthawk, Valkyrie, Gargoyle, Hellcat, and their lawyer, Matt Murdock, a.k.a. Daredevil, as well as Kyle's new nurse, Luann Bloom, and his
longtime.
What is the other guy? It's Rosenblum. That's his other attorney. That's right.
Yeah.
They're celebrating because finally all that legal mess that Kyle has been facing since Ed Hannigan's run is over.
It feels like it's been the entirety of this show, but it isn't. But it's been going on for a really long time.
Yeah. But before they can really celebrate with the party, agents from the CIB come in. Now, you'll remember that the CIB is sort of DeMatteis's take on the CIA. And Kyle has tangled with these guys before. And basically, Matt Murdock, of course, Daredevil, figures out that they're lying. And before anything can happen, the Defenders confront them. and these government agents pull out pistols and fire some kind of knockout gas, and all of the defenders are incapacitated.
But they have taken Kyle with them.
That's right. And we'll have more on that in next week's episode.
We will. Because what's really interesting to me about this, and I don't want to get too deeply into this, but this story, this moment, begins a story that actually lasts through the end of this series.
That's right.
Or at least close to the end of the series. But we return to Doctor Strange, Beast, Wonder Man, and Devil Slayer. They try to travel into this alternate dimension where Corey is being held. And they find themselves in midair. And they're falling. And we get a little action as they reach the ground. We get a little bit of the Beast and Wonder Man and their repartee, which is nice. And then we see Ian Fate and his army of demons, and Corey is trapped inside some kind of force bubble as the demons, pummel away at it, trying to reach her. Devil Slayer is full of anguish and rage, and then the battle begins. And it's Doctor Strange versus Ian Fate, and everyone else fighting these demons.
Right.
And there's, fight, and Corey, I'm coming with Devil Slayer. And of course, Doctor Strange and Ian Fate are fighting, and Doctor Strange has already made a point of saying that Ian Fate is pretty powerful. But then Doctor Strange loses his patience, and he just makes short work of Ian Fate at that point.
Right. But unfortunately, during the battle, one of the demons, Devil Slayer stabs one of the demons through the chest with his sword. The demon pulls the sword out, and before any of the Avengers can act, the demon is about to stab Devil Slayer in the back, and Corey gets between him and takes the blow instead. The sword impales her heart. She's dead. Devil Slayer picks her up. He's in anguish, and then the cruelest stroke of all, we find out that this wasn't Corey all along. This was in fact Sunshine, disguised as Corey.
Yeah, it's interesting because then Devil Slayer says, "How? How is this possible?" And Ian Fate says, "Would you believe it, Pain? After all the years, all the planning, I couldn't do it. I couldn't take an innocent woman's life. I sent Corey back to her home under a spell of forgetfulness. But I had to hurt you." So basically he's saying, I still had to hurt you. He wasn't innocent. He was worthless. But I could see that you cared about him, and now he's dead. Devil Slayer tries to kill him. But then Wonder Man, of all people, stops him and says, "You've been so full of vindictive, self-righteous wrath that you've forgotten one little thing. You killed this man's wife and child. If Fate is insane, if Sunshine is dead, it's your fault."
That's right. Here's that anti-hero anguish that I'm a sucker for every time. Devil Slayer picks up Sunshine's body and he says, "I thought I'd buried the past. I thought I was finding the real Eric Simon Payne at last. And heaven help me, perhaps I have found him."
Yeah. It's really interesting. This issue
I want to point out to my good friends C. Robert Cargill and Scott Derrickson, if you guys are going to use Devil Slayer in Doctor Strange 2, I would like to read for the role. I think I could pull it off.
No. You need to audition for Jessica Jones so you can fill in for the role of Hellcat. When she suits up.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's me you're happy to
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Please don't do that. That's just, I'm literally getting like shivers up my spine. I'm gonna go see The Nun this weekend, and I'm sure that's not gonna be as frightening as you making that sound. Anyway, Ian Fate thinks he's won, and Simon Williams tells him nobody won, basically.
That's right. And then the Beast reminds Doctor Strange that for several issues now, he's had a problem that he wishes to speak to Doctor Strange about.
Right, and maybe
they please get to that.
Maybe we can talk about that after all. And Yeah. So what's interesting, and I won't belabor the point because I don't want to take too much time on it, but one thing that's really interesting is if you look at the letters pages in these issues, it shows that our excitement about J.M. DeMatteis's run on this series is shared by, the level of excitement is shared by many of the people who are writing in. They're just thrilled.
Absolutely. And I think the letter from Bruce Canwell of Boyden, Maine, sums it up perfectly. I finished Defenders 100 and immediately started telling my fellow comics readers that this issue kicked ass the way this comic hasn't done since the Headman Nebulon Elf with a Gun saga.
Are you secretly Bruce Canwell?
I was secretly Bruce Canwell. That's a letter from 14-year-old Brian Keene.
Bruce Canwell, Brian Keene. It kind of sounds, well, I don't know. Maybe, well, wait, is your name actually Bruce Canwell and you changed it to Brian Keene?
There it is. My secret's out.
All right. Well, Bruce Canwell, if you're out there, you can sue Brian. All right. So the Defenders 105. This is a great cover. I don't usually like these sort of split screen covers, but we have a cover. It says cold as crystal, hot as hellfire, and the left half, or the left 2/3 of the cover, is Doctor Strange, the Beast, and Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, stuck in a world of crystal ice, and hot as hellfire. That third of the cover is Damon Hellstrom burning in hellish flames.
And that cover is by editor Al Milgrom, because remember, under the Shooter empire at Marvel Comics, comics got put out on time, or else.
Right.
So it's not unusual to see the editor of the book filling in as cover artist.
In this case, especially. Yeah. Well, comics would be nice if comics came out on time in general, but
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think Marvel should bring back Jim Shooter for a year. You can make it a stunt, but fuck yeah.
All right. So finally, we're at the Sanctum Sanctorum, and Doctor Strange is helping the Beast out with his problem. And Doctor Strange is using the Eye of Agamotto, and they've actually spent here for almost a week.
That's right.
And they've been studying an unusual object.
Right. Now, if you were a reader of the Avengers back then, you'd know about this object. But if you weren't, we'll recap it here for you. It's an item called the Resurrection Stone. And what's interesting here, this story arc in Avengers was written, in fact, by J.M. DeMatteis. And now he gets a chance to tie it up here in the in the Defenders. Basically, the Beast got back together with his high school sweetheart, this woman named Vera, and she was staying in Avengers Mansion with Beast and the other Avengers when she was apparently poisoned by the Avengers butler Jarvis, who was then revealed to actually be a Skrull, shape-shifting race of aliens.
And here's the foundation for Secret Invasion right here.
That's right. This Skrull sent the Avengers on a quest through time and space in search of this Resurrection Stone. It was sort of like the Infinity Stones, but this one has the power to return life to the dead. And the Beast, seeing how dangerous that stone could be, destroyed it. That happened in Avengers issue 209. But in destroying it, he also doomed his true love, Vera.
And he knew this when he did it. He chose, the rest of humanity over his love. Yeah.
Right. But Doctor Strange and Reed Richards have figured out that, they assure him, hey, you did the right thing, but we may be able to save Vera after all. If they can use some part of the stone, if they can enter the stone itself,
right,
and confront the malevolent consciousness residing within it,
right, and they're together in this, by the way, because the stone itself is a product of both science and magic. So Reed represents science, and Doctor Strange represents magic, and
right,
they need to work together. And yeah, so Doctor Strange says maybe we can get in there and learn some knowledge about the stone, because afterwards they have to destroy the stone completely, or it'll start reforming itself. It'll use its power to seduce them, but first they have to take this great risk and enter the remains of the stone.
Right.
So we cut away. We cut away, Brian.
To some hardcore shit for, hang on, let me flip over to the cover. Yeah, this was still approved by the Comics Code Authority.
Yeah, and this is dark shit that would have been in Neil Gaiman's Sandman run at the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we see the son of Satan. He's still in Arizona, and he's surrounded by a circle of chanting demons.
And Satan appears carrying a naked baby. And he says, "The moment has come, my son, for the final evolution. For months I've sought to purge you of your human half, give your hellish dark soul total reign, and now we shall see what my labors have been worth. I'm sure you know what must be done, Damon." He lays the baby down, this being held hand and foot by demons, and he picks up a big stone. And the point here is that Damon Hellstrom is supposed to smash the stone down onto the baby and murder it.
That's right. The baby is innocence personified, unknowing, pure. And
Hellstrom says, and again, I want to point, Hellstrom says, such a creature cannot be permitted to live.
That's right.
And he lifts the stone to smash it down and murder the baby. And then he can't do it. He smashes the stone in his hands and reveals that he has too much of his human side still in him. The baby, it turns out, was not a baby at all, but a sort of cloven-hoofed demon that then attacks him. And by the way, called
the demon Maladrill.
Maladrill. And Satan sends Maladrill back to hell, and then raves at his son, Brian.
That's right. He says, "Now hear me, Damon, and hear me well. You followed me down into the netherworld because you wanted to. You said there was no longer a place for you in his world." His being capitalized there, of course, to mean God. Satan continues, "I took you in, nurtured you, tutored you. But the final leap must be made freely of your own will. You must choose." And, Damon tells him, I know, Father, I'm trying, but there's a part of me that will not give in, and I can't fight it. It's too strong.
Yeah, and then we cut away, but I just, when I read that again, I was like, damn, I mean, like, here you have a character who's a superhero, who's on the verge of smashing what he thinks is an infant child to death. It's pretty dark.
And is reduced to tears because he couldn't bring himself to kill this.
Exactly. Yeah, he's bummed out that he can't murder the baby, that he can't bring himself to murder the baby. He's disappointed himself and his father.
That's right.
Yeah, it's pretty twisted shit. So we go back, and Doctor Strange, Reed Richards, and the Beast discuss who's going. They decide they're all going to go inside the crystal. They do, and once again, as seems to be typical, when they transmit themselves into some foreign dimension, they find themselves in the middle of the sky. They tumble to the ground, and this was fun. They land on the ground in this crystal world. Everything is crystals,
right?
And the crystals on the ground rise up and transform into monstrous dinosaur demon creatures.
That's right.
Yeah.
We then, before we get into that battle with the crystal and demon dinosaur creatures, there's an ad for Moondance Comics. They were a back issue service. Now, this issue was published in 1982. Of course, Conan issue number 1 these days goes for what, Chris? Almost $1,000, I believe.
I don't know. That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. Back then, you could get it for $70 from this company. I always find that interesting.
Yeah. No, I mean, you look at these, although some of these things were, already pretty valuable.
Star Wars issue number 1, they were selling for $10.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
All
so what would be interesting is to try to contact them now. No, I'm sure they don't.
Do you still honor this ad?
Yeah, I wonder if they... Yeah, exactly. I wonder if they still exist. If they still exist, everybody look them up, call them and ask for your copy of Star Wars number 1 for $10. Anyway, the Beast, Reed Richards, and Doctor Strange, Reed Richards points out it was too easy for them when they destroy these crystal creatures, and Doctor Strange agrees. It seems that was more of a test of our abilities than an attempt to defeat us. So they start traveling through this area, and congratulations, Doctor Strange. Your mystic tracking skills are quite refined. We hear that voice, we see a shadow, but then we cut back to Damon Hellstrom. We don't get to see who that is.
But before we return to Arizona, Chris, I do have some sad news.
What's that?
Moondance Comics is no more.
Well,
but the very first thing that pops up in Google is a remembrance page for them on Facebook, a page for fans of the Moondance Comic store chain, which spread from Vermont to Maine back in the 80s.
There you go.
So they are no more.
That's very sad, but not surprising. Well, in any case, we go back to the Arizona desert where Hellstrom it's 3:40 in the morning. The crowd of unhuman devils jeers as Hellstrom passes among them. He's dragging over his shoulder, Brian, a mockery of the crucifix that is formed out of what is apparently demon flesh.
Yeah, basically it's a blasphemous icon. A lot of now. I don't mean to offend our listeners who are members of the Church of Satan, because of course they don't believe in the biblical Satan. But in horror fiction, satanic stuff is often shown to be a perverse permutation of Christian iconography. So here we have the cross, and like you said, it's formed out of demon flesh. Its points are severed heads, and Damon is carrying it across the desert, much like Jesus carried his cross.
Now, I want to make 2 points here. The first is that I love the fact that it's my suspicion that this is the first podcast or show of any kind that, when being concerned about offending the religious, makes its apologies to the Church of Satan.
Oh, no, I think we've done that on the horror show with Brian Keene.
All right, so the second. But I thought you were about to apologize to Christians.
Well, no, a quick aside, and we got time here. I'm looking at the clock.
Yeah.
My novel, Earthworm Gods, when that first came out in 2005, there's these Cthulhu cultists, and one of the protagonists, he doesn't know what Cthulhu is or anything. He just keeps referring to these cultists as Satanists.
Right. And
I got a lot of angry emails from Church of Satan members who were upset that I had depicted them as these blood-crazed killers.
That's hysterical. I mean, the letters that writers get and emails that writers get are crazy.
But they had a legit argument.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying it's like it's a book, and your explanation of the historic portrayal of quote unquote Satanists in reference to the biblical Satan is accurate, and I'm not diminishing that. I just think it's so funny to me to hear that concern, because weirdly, and I'm going off on a massive tangent here. And again, when I'm happy to mock. What I always say is that so many Christians out there, and I have Christians in air quotes, are unchristian, and so I'm happy to mock Christians who are not Christian. I'm not mocking actual Christians. Does that make sense?
Right.
But the amazing thing to me is that you don't know how many books I could put anything I want in a book, and the things that publishers tend to be sensitive about. I've had the most grotesque things in books, and publishers will come back and try to limit the number of times characters say "God damn it" or "Jesus Christ."
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And I'm just like,
I mean,
what are
Random House?
Yeah.
It's well known. My Random House Bantam novel, Terminal, was vastly different from the original novel that they accepted for publication, because the higher ups got a hold of it and made me change an entire plot point, basically the entire third act, because they didn't want to offend Christian readers who predominantly would buy the book at Walmart. This is exactly what I was told at the time. So yeah, it's that, and if you're a writer out there listening, never kill the dog. You can kill all the children you want, but if you kill a dog
or a cat,
piss off your readers, or a cat, yeah.
But especially the dog. So it's really interesting to me that we have these sensitivities. But we're aware. In any case, speaking of sensitivities, the other point I was going to make is that later than this, but not that much later than this, in the pages of Swamp Thing, Rick Veitch was having his legendary run on Swamp Thing. I'm pretty sure it was later than this. And Rick Veitch ended up leaving the book, and his final issue of Swamp Thing was never published, I don't think. I'm trying to remember exactly. But because...
The one where Swamp Thing met Jesus?
Yeah, Swamp Thing went back in time by passing through sort of, wooden and plant-based, life. And in the issue, he goes back to the crucifixion, and he is part of the cross. And he met Jesus, and he was part of the story of the crucifixion. Yep. And DC Comics at the time, I believe it was Vertigo. Even in Vertigo, they were like, no, we're not doing this. And of course, I haven't read it, but I'm so curious to read it. But so that sensitivity is clear, and so I found it really interesting that no one balks at the idea that Hellstrom is essentially about to be crucified, and he's carrying this demonic version of the crucifix. Anyway, interesting.
Well, and just to get your timing right, because I'm going to bring up Swamp Thing later in this issue.
Okay.
But yeah, that was long after I was buying these issues of the Defenders when I was in junior high school.
Yeah. This was 82, so you were in high school.
Yeah, and Alan Moore and Steve Bissett's Swamp Thing, I was buying that when I was in boot camp. So that would have been around late 85, early 86, I suppose.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it was a few years later.
Yep. So anyway, yeah, they're about to put Damon on the cross, and he finally snaps. He beats the demons who are dressed like Roman centurions, by the way.
Yeah.
And he says, "This is a blasphemy, a mockery of all that is holy, no matter how great the evil in my soul, Father, no matter how uncontrollable the passions that tear at my heart, I will never let you rule me. Never."
Yeah. So Satan disappears, and we come back to this world of crystal and ice, and we find that there is a giant female crystal creature facing this group of defenders, and she says, "I am the giver of life, the raiser of the dead, the mistress of this realm you so callously crushed." And the beast is saying, "Listen, we're defending ourselves." And so she's upset with them. She actually starts to weep tears that wash over them and begin to turn them to crystal.
That's right. And just a quick shout out to letterer Shelley Lefferman. I don't know what gender Shelley is. Shelley's one of those names that it can go to either, but Shelley's work here with the crystal creature, it's really neat. The lettering for the creature's dialogue is different than the lettering for the other defenders.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things you can only do in comics. It wouldn't translate in a movie.
Yeah, it's interesting. So Doctor Strange and Reed Richards get turned to crystal. The Beast fights back, and it's a pretty cool scene. The Beast is smashing through her. He says, "You've convinced me beyond a shadow of a doubt that what I did was right. I know Vera would understand. I'm trapped here with no way out, but I know," and the voice says, "Trapped you are, mortal, but not the way you think. Did you truly believe that you could stop me by destroying that form? I am no mere construct. I am all that you see." Basically, she is this entire realm, and then the rain falls, and the Beast is also turned to crystal.
That's right.
We're back in hell with my favorite page of the issue. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're in hell. And Damon is standing in front of Satan's throne. Satan's on the throne. Go ahead, Chris, because I know you want to talk about this.
Well, it's this great moment where, and again, the reason I want to talk about it is because once again, it represents the interpretation of the Marvel version of hell that I really like and is still the Marvel hell in my mind. And in fact, in February, people who have never read mine and Tom Snagosky's Punisher run, drawn by Bernie Wrightson, will see that actually we explore that version of Marvel's hell in Punisher Purgatory. We talk about it quite a bit, and Damon Hellstrom appears in that story. But in any case, it's Damon Hellstrom declaring that his soul is forever free. These past months of trials have pushed my spirit farther than it has ever been pushed, taught me much about myself I never knew, but I know now the path of decency is the path I walk. Whatever the struggle, whatever the cost. And Satan says, that's why I brought you here. Too long you've been uncertain, vacillating between roles of duality. You had to choose, and you chose wisely. And Hellstrom's like, you're saying this is a good choice? And Satan says, I believe, Damon, that it is time for you to learn a most important lesson. And then the 4 panels across the bottom of the page showing the 4 faces that we've seen before of Satan.
That's right. Satan, Thog, Satanish, and Mephisto.
Exactly. And they're all speaking one word balloon. So it's one word balloon across the 4 panels, but attributed to all 4 of them. So it's Satan in all of these guys is saying, just as there are opposites warring in your soul, so there are opposites warring in all creation. Each man has many faces, from the highest of the high to the lowest of the low. And although I am the embodiment of the low, an incarnation of evil, I too have innumerable faces, myriad names, and I too contain with me an opposite face. Now,
that's right.
This is fucked up. Because you turn the page and the caption says, look upon my other face and understand why your choice pleases me. And the implication here is that Satan and God are one and the same.
That's right.
Now,
we would see this, you brought up Swamp Thing.
Let me say, Brian, this. Or the implication is that Satan is revealing the angelic face. Not necessarily that Satan and God are one and the same, but Satan is revealing the angelic face, and Hellstrom can't even look at it.
No, see, I think it's the face of God. That's okay. How I've always interpreted it.
Okay.
That God and Satan are the same being, because he even says there, darkness served its function in creation, its role as important as lights. Man evolves as much through adversity as through benevolence. I always took this to imply that God and Satan, Satan was just another face of God. And, again, we see this repeated years later in Alan Moore and Bassett's classic Swamp Thing run.
Yeah.
Similar thing. So
I just think, you look at this page and what DeMatteis is doing on this page, and you think that, a short time later, Hellboy is created, and there are, chains that will not carry it because it has hell in the title.
Yep.
That the son of Satan as a character was later, so it's amazing to me that this is in here, and I'm so curious to ask DeMatteis if there was any blowback.
Well, especially because, again, it's approved by the Comics Code. That was something they still had to worry about at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. So we go back to Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum. Hellstrom has been transported there by Satan, and he sees that the Resurrection Stone is there, and it's been reformed. And he hears a voice, a sweet, seductive, please don't do it, Brian, rich with powerful allure, that is the Resurrection Stone talking to him, trying to get him to use it, and Hellstrom realizes that something's going on, and he grabs the Resurrection Stone, and he shatters it, releasing destroying the creature who is the be all and end all in the Resurrection Stone, and releasing Reed Richards, the Beast, and Doctor Strange.
That's right. And then Doctor Strange separates the pieces of the stone, sending them adrift across time and space so that they can never be reformed. And as far as I know, they never have been reformed. So that's a dangling plot line out there for any current Marvel writer. Cullen Bunn, I know you listen to the show every week. There you go, Cullen. There's your 51st comic of the month to write.
Yeah, exactly. And Cullen needs to write the version of the Defenders that we're talking about that, if we don't get to write it, Cullen needs to write that version that, like that Guardians of the Galaxy book that Donny Cates is doing, will have everyone who's ever been a Defender in it. But in any case, Hank goes in to say goodbye to Vera because obviously without, they haven't solved it. And he's assuming she's going to die. But now that Damon Hellstrom is back and much holier than he used to be, says, do not deny hope. And of course, we have seen his power of healing before. And we won't belabor the point. He actually heals Vera. And she comes back to life. She's okay. Hank does a great little somersault or tumble here. And, he's excited and he picks her up and she doesn't know what happened. The last thing she remembers, Jarvis was pouring her tea. And Vera says, but Hank, where are we? Reed Richards says, you're with friends. Hank says the best. It's a new life. And then we end, Brian, on this panel that is essentially the ending of A Christmas Carol.
Yes.
And clearly intended to mirror that. We look outside, and outside Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum in Greenwich Village, it's Christmas morning. People are wandering around with packages in their arms. Kids bundled up, snow on the ground. Everything is right with the world. For now.
That's right. But things are about to get very, very bad for the world and also for the Defenders. Now, if you're one of our listeners who reads along at home, before next week's show, you want to pick up Captain America issue 268 because the story actually begins there. And then it crosses over into the Defenders. On next week's show, Chris, should we spoil it for people?
Sure.
2, not 1, but 2 superheroes will die.
Dun dun dun. All right, and we'll leave it at that. We'll leave people guessing.
That's right. Well, I guess they don't have to guess. They could probably go Google it. But
or rightly so, they should be reading along, Brian.
That's right.
They should read those before we get to them.
And you know what else they should do in addition to reading along?
Well, before you say what I know you're going to say, today, which when you hear this, folks, will be yesterday, today is the birthday of our good friend James A. Moore.
James A. Moore, co-host of Three Guys with Beards.
Indeed. So, happy birthday, Jim.
Happy birthday, Jim. Does he listen to this show?
I don't know, but he should.
He should. He really should. Well, yeah, Jim, birthday boy Jim Moore and Jonathan Mayberry and yourself, folks can listen to you guys every week on Three Guys with Beards. They can tune in and listen to me, Mary San Giovanni, Dave Thomas, and a cast of, I think we've got a dozen other co-hosts now on the Horror Show with Brian Keene. Both of those are available via the Project Entertainment Network, the same company that brings you Defenders Dialogue. If you have a spare dollar, check out the Project Entertainment Network's Patreon page. They not only bring you Defenders Dialogue for free and me and Chris's other podcasts are free. They have 25 different podcasts touching on everything from geek culture to faith. I mean, it's across the board, fascinating stuff. And they're a for-profit company. They're not a charity. So the best way to help them out, if you go to Patreon and just give them $1 a month, basically the price of a cup of coffee, you support Defenders Dialogue and all the other great shows. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our engineer Tommy Clark and his podcast, Necrocasticon, also available via the Project Entertainment Network. Necrocasticon looks at the conjunction of heavy metal and horror fiction, horror film. So it's a neat little show, and we thank him every week for making us sound good. Chris, do you have anything to tell our listeners before we go?
Brian, the only thing I want to tell our listeners is that I want them to go read the Defenders, not just listen to Defenders dialogue, but also go read along, and so that they can enjoy the weird characters. I also want to say October 13th, Saturday, October 13th, Merrimack Valley Halloween Book Festival in Haverhill, Massachusetts, at the Haverhill Public Library, filled with guests like yourself, Owen King, Jennifer McMahon, Kelly Braffett, Grady Hendrix, and a cast of thousands, almost as many people as co-host The Horror Show with Brian Keene. You should be there and save all your book money until then.
That's right. I agree. Well, wait, no, don't save it till then, because next Saturday, Mary and myself and Stephen Kozlowski and Wesley Southard are signing at Protean Books in Baltimore, Maryland from noon to 3. So spend some money there, and then after that, save it until the Merrimack Valley Halloween Book Festival.
Fair enough. All right. Well, Excelsior, Brian.
Excelsior, Chris. We'll see you next week, folks.
Do you love comic books and consider yourself a die-hard fan? Then you need to listen to Parlapod. We have news, reviews, and interviews with your favorite pros, all while bringing some serious laughs. New episodes drop every Wednesday in time for New Comic Book Day. Parlapod is available on the Project Entertainment Network, all major podcast outlets, and parlapod.com. Tune in and fuel your fandom with Parlapod.
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology featuring short fiction from the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network shows. Three guys with beards: Jim Moore, Jonathan Maybar, and Chris Golden.
Tom Clark from Necrocast Ig-On.
Brian Keene of The Horror Show. Chuck Buda and Armand Rosamilia of the Mando Method. Mary San Giovanni of Cosmic Shenanigans. Jay Wilburn from Matters of Faith. John Urbancic of Ink Stains.
Bizong's Mr. Frank.
Available on Kindle and in paperback and through the Project Entertainment Network store.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.